I stepped out of the taxi in full uniform, clutching my duffel bag, my heart heavy with 25 years of silence. The late September air, cool and thick with the scent of damp leaves, enveloped me. I stopped at the cast-iron gates that enclosed the house I had once called my own. Even before I reached the porch, my sister Larissa was already calling the police. A surveillance camera was buzzing above the gate, turning slightly as if recognizing me. I waited for the click of the lock, the sound of an invitation, but nothing came. The gate didn't budge. I pressed the intercom button. A sharp beep, then silence. I tried again. Larissa, my voice cracked, rusty from long disuse. It's me. The front door opened. Larissa appeared on the threshold, wearing a custom-made jacket and formal trousers. The real mistress of the estate, she stood on the top step, already holding the phone to her ear. "I'm calling the police," she said. Her eyes narrowed as if I were a stranger. "Someone is trying to break into the property. Claims a relative." Shock knocked the air out of my lungs. "Larissa, what are you doing? This is not your home anymore," she snapped. "You've been gone for decades, Kira. There's no point in showing up here like this and expecting anything." I clutched my duffel bag tighter. "I just retired. I thought I'd see my mother, maybe my father." She chuckled. "You should have thought of them before disappearing for 25 years. We've moved on. You're not in the will. You're not even on the property papers." Those words hit harder than any combat report I'd ever written. "I grew up in this house," I said quietly. "That birch tree over there." I pointed to the tree that was still scratching the attic window. I had broken my arm climbing it. My blood had spilled on the carpet, which you probably replaced. "I left a part of my soul here," Larissa gritted her teeth. "You always turned everything around so that you would be the center of attention. Do you think that your uniform gives you the right to just show up and wait for the heroine to receive you?" The police car turned painfully slowly onto our street. The blue lights were flashing, but the siren was off. 2 people got out of the car. One was older, the other was a young man who had just graduated from the academy. The elder one froze slightly when he saw me. Kira Rostova," he asked. "A lieutenant colonel of the GRU Special Forces." "Yesterday I retired," I swallowed. "This is my parents' house." The young officer glanced at Larissa, who folded her arms triumphantly. "This property belongs to Larissa Volkova and Semyon Rostov. There are no legal records of Kira Rostova having ownership or residence rights. My family opened and closed." "Wait, Semyon Rostov, my father. Is he still here?" Larissa's face remained stony. "He moved here after selling the house we grew up in. It was my grandfather's dacha. I renovated it legally." "I don't care about the laws," I whispered. "I care that it was a house." I cleared my throat. "Ma'am, if you don't have papers to prove your right of residency, we'll have to ask you to leave the premises." My hands shook as I reached for the resignation papers, but even I knew they were irrelevant here. I took a step back, then another, until my boots touched the edge of the sidewalk. I didn't cry when they took my comrades in Syria. I didn't cry when I almost died in the hospital, but I cried now, because the place that shaped me refused to acknowledge me. I saw a silhouette in the living room window, my father. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even look at me. That night I slept in my car, staring at the dark outline of the house that was supposed to be mine. By morning, there was a "for sale" sign on the lawn. It was no longer a refuge, it was a battlefield. The next morning, exhausted and dead tired, I stopped at a small cafe. Regina Petrova was already there, in formal trousers and a dark jacket. A sharp contrast to my faded uniform and the fatigue etched on my face. We hadn't seen each other since college, but she looked at me as if time hadn't passed. That alone made me almost cry. "I saw the ad this morning," she said by way of greeting, turning her tablet toward me. "Here it is, my house, listed for sale by Warren Invest LLC. And here's the cherry on the cake," she added grimly, handing me a printout. The transfer of ownership had been registered 3 months ago. My name was listed as seller, but the signature wasn't mine. "It's a fake," I said quietly, feeling a cold pressure build behind my eyes. I never signed anything. I thought so. Regina opened another document, certified by a notary who had nearly lost his license for falsifying documents last year. I'll subpoena him. I shook my head in disbelief. So they sold their old house and are now laundering money through mine. Regina frowned. What? I took a deep breath. 3 months ago, they moved out of their house, said it was time to start over, and showed up here. Larissa said it was smarter to consolidate family assets. Mother was especially keen on how sentimental the old house was, but I didn't think they meant this house. Regina nodded slowly. They were probably using Warren Invest as a buffer to avoid legal risks. Whoever is behind this company, I bet your sister's husband is involved. My stomach sank, Anatoly said. He's in international logistics, isn't he? Yes, and they keep some supplies in the basement. Regina pointed to a note in her file. City services are showing a spike in energy consumption at the facility, as if something is being cooled down there. But no permits had been filed for renovation or commercial use. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. An email from my mother. I didn't want to read it, but I opened it. Kira, this is not betrayal, this is practicality. You never lived here, but we did, and you are never around. Love, Mom. It hit harder than I expected. It was as if she was justifying her theft with maternal indifference. I need to get into that house, I muttered. Not just to get it back, I want to know what's inside. Regina hesitated. It could be dangerous, Kira. If they are using the house for something illegal, I will not back down. The rest of the day was spent in tense calls and quiet meetings. Late that evening, I returned to my car, not knowing whether I was more angry or numb. I parked down the street, deciding to stay and watch. The air was still warm, sticky, as if the Moscow region had not yet embraced autumn. A little after 10 o'clock in the evening, I noticed a man standing across the street. He didn't look at me, but he lingered by the lamppost. When he left, I didn't think much of it until I saw a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. It wasn't folded, just pressed down like a warning. If you are the real Kira, I'll wait for you in the alley by house number 7 at 2300. Come alone. I looked down the dark path that led behind the old bakery. I had 10 minutes. I didn't hesitate. They said you were mentally unstable after your service, the neighbor whispered. The man's voice was low, sharp, full of urgency. His name was Ignat. He looked to be about 45, a weathered face, a former Marine turned mechanic. We were standing in the shadow of an old street lamp at the edge of an alley behind a house. They say you're dangerous, Kira, he muttered. But to me, danger is what's going on in that building. My fingers tightened on the edge of my jacket, where a small tape recorder lay in an inside pocket. What do you mean? I asked. I saw people unloading boxes from black vans. The plates were gone before they even arrived. They didn't stay long. Your sister's husband, Anatoly, he's there every week, always wearing gloves. Not a word to the neighbors. I remembered the last words Anatoly said to me at my grandfather's funeral. You should stick to places where there are guns, Lieutenant Colonel. This is not your territory anymore. That night, I returned to the alley alone, dressed in black, with a camera on my collar and a voice recorder on. I hid behind a half-burnt fence in the backyard. Midnight came with a low hum of engines. 2 black trucks drove in without headlights. I held my breath. 4 men came out, then Anatoly appeared. His stride was confident, relaxed, as if it were a normal Tuesday night. He pointed toward the back door of the house. The group moved with practiced ease. Boxes, gloves, everything is efficient. Regina was right, it was organized. I crept closer, careful not to make any noise in the gravel, and set the small audio recorder that was cracked in the vent. Voices came from inside, too muffled to make out the words, but then one cut through sharper than the rest. If that officer chick gets wind of this, cut her loose. Without warning, I froze. The voice was familiar, hoarse, reasonable. My father. My throat went dry. I replayed the recording in my mind, that deep accent, that manner of speech. I hadn't heard him speak to me directly in years. Now I could hear him plotting my elimination. I backed away slowly, slipping behind the fence, my hands shaking. I clutched the recorder as if it might burn my palm. Back in the car, I listened to the audio again, carefully cleaning it. All the voices were unclear except his. That one phrase repeated itself in my head over and over. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I circled the block again and returned to the alley. But when I got to the vent, my recorder wasn't there. Someone was there, someone new. Panic washed over me, thick and metallic. My cover was blown. I had to act fast. I drove to the nearest diner to collect myself, my heart pounding. I hadn't even finished half my coffee when my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. The message read: "You're playing with fire. I have your military psychological report. Do you want to see what it says about you?" My father met me in the parking lot. He didn't hug me, didn't even look me in the eye. The wind was picking up. He stood by his dark blue sedan, his formal jacket buttoned up to the collar and his hat pulled down over his eyes, as if to protect himself from recognition. But he wasn't afraid of the rain. He was afraid of me. I recognized the detachment in his eyes, the stiffness in his posture. He had rehearsed this meeting, prepared for it like a business deal. Cool, clean, efficient. I stopped 2 steps away. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't flinch. "You came back different." I swallowed. "I served this country for 25 years, and in those 25 years, you became someone I don't recognize." That phrase hit like a gunshot. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. How he says he is proud of, or at least tacitly acknowledges, my work. I have never imagined myself as indifferent. "I want the truth about the house," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. "You knew Grandpa left it to me. You were there when it was signed." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "That document was out of date. So out of date that they had to forge my signature, hide it behind a shell company." I stepped closer. "I have an audio recording." That got to him. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, but he still didn't look directly at me. "I heard your voice. You said that if I found out, you would cut off the ends." He finally turned to me. His eyes were colder than I remembered. "I meant what I said. We were trying to protect the family name. Your return threatens everything we have built. Your esteemed company. Your daughter is part of it. And I live in my car because you sold my house." He didn't answer. He glanced at the black SUV parked across the street. "You're not one of us anymore." The words didn't echo. They fell and stayed. He turned, walked over to the SUV, and the driver got out to open the door for him. I recognized the man immediately, the same one who helped unload the boxes in the warehouse. They drove away without a word. I stood alone in the rain. When I returned to the car, I found an envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. A simple envelope, sealed with tape. I sat down, turned on the light in the car, and with trembling hands opened it. Inside was a photocopy of my grandfather's original will. My name, my home address, everything was intact. The signatures and dates matched the copy I had kept in an encrypted archive for years. No stipulations about transfer, no conditions of sale. It was irrefutable. There was a handwritten note attached to the top. I had certified the document that day. I know they faked it later. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Proof. The first crack in their story. I took a picture of it and sent it to Regina with one line: "It changes everything." I sat in the corner of my temporary rental apartment. A mattress, one chair, no curtains, just the blue light of my laptop. Outside, the night wind ruffled the siding of the house. A few hours ago, I contacted Ilya, a former colleague, forwarding him the original deed of gift scanned from the will along with the corporate trail that Regina had started digging up. He responded almost immediately. "I remember Voron Invest," he wrote. "We flagged them as a shell company during a counterintelligence investigation in 2012, money laundering through sham contracts, but we were ordered to back off." The case was closed. Now the name Anatoly Chernov, listed in the appendix to that very case as logistics consultant, was looking at me. I froze. Larissa always insisted that Anatoly had saved the family from ruin. He had restored his father's business, but restored it with what? Dirty money. I opened the next PDF from Regina transaction records related to shell companies renting a warehouse. She traced them to 3 legal entities registered in different regions under different names, but the money flowed to one place. Larissa's personal account more than 50 million rubles over the past year and a half. I gritted my teeth and opened the lease. My father's signature, bold and sweeping, was right there. Land use supervisor. He had signed it. They were all in on this. Ilya wrote again. Are you sure you're ready for this? If you act, they'll strike back. I answered without hesitation. I will not back down. I am not just fighting for a house. I'm fighting to expose what they did. My inbox pings, leak, thread, urgent, she's investigating. It was an internal letter, sent anonymously between 2 Voron Invest addresses. She started connecting the dots, clearing everything up to the 16th, blocking the accounts. Rostov girl persistent. I read it twice. They knew. They were already trying to cover their tracks again. I stood at the gate again, this time in a dress uniform, covered in medals. But there was someone more powerful than the medal next to me. My lawyer. Regina adjusted the strap of her leather folder as we waited for the counter in the Odintsovo RS registry building. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, but the tension between us and the clerk was thick as cement. The clerk tapped away at her keyboard, her eyes darting across the screen. This is a deed of gift, she said, almost too casually. Regina did not flinch. That is why we are here. We are filing a motion for an immediate injunction against all transfers based on compelling evidence of forgery and fraud. I pushed forward the folder Regina had prepared. A detailed analysis of the signature discrepancies. A timeline of the fake notary's actions and suspicious financial trails. On top of the stack lay the certified original deed of gift from my grandfather. The woman's eyes widened. She looked at Regina, then at me. Lieutenant Colonel Rostov, I said softly, retired. I grew up in that house. By midday we had confirmation with a seal. The department had placed a temporary ban on all real estate transactions pending further investigation. That wasn't all, but it was a start, a line in the sand. The drive home felt surreal. This time we didn't park across the street or hide in the shadows. We pulled right into the driveway. Laurie's Lexus was already there, and so was Anatoly's truck. I rang the doorbell. Larissa answered, her lips already twisted into a polished, fake smile until she saw my uniform. Then she saw Regina, the color draining from her face. We are here to serve you with a restraining order, Regina said clearly, handing over the envelope. As of this moment, any transfer, lease, or modification of the property is suspended. You are hereby notified. Larissa's hands were shaking as she took the papers. What is this? Some kind of joke about Shepelan? Anatoly appeared behind her, slow and calculating. Do you really want to go down this path, Kira? He said, his voice like oiled gravel. You don't know who you're fighting. I met his gaze, calmly, reservedly. I used to work in internal investigations for the GRU, I said. I've seen people like you, watch them bluff, threaten, and then give in. His eyes narrowed. For a split second I saw it. Fear, maybe not of me, but of everything collapsing. Larissa gasped. You can't do that. You're not even the legal owner. That's exactly what we're going to prove in court, Regina intervened. We turned around and left. The slam of the door behind us was louder than I expected. In the car, Regina looked at me. They're going to strike back, Kira. Are you ready? What they didn't know was that I had access to tools they couldn't even imagine. Digital forensics, chain of custody, metadata, a few friends who owed me a favor. The quiet hum of my laptop filled the silent apartment. I leaned over the second monitor, tracking digital crumbs left behind by people who thought they were smarter than the system. I entered the secure room on Zoom. Ilya appeared, tired eyes, marine cap, despite the late hour. Then Zilata connected. She had always preferred anonymity, a blurred background, and a voice modulated just enough to avoid AI tracking. I got your package, Zilata said without preamble. It's well encrypted, but let's see what the liars leave behind. I uploaded a zip file with screenshots and one particularly suspicious wire transfer receipt. Someone been laundering money, Zlata whistled. Trace the IP, that's all I need, I said. Meanwhile, Ilya leaned closer to the camera. I ran the company name you sent me, Martha Tech. You're not going to like this. He downloaded a redacted report from the Defense Department's internal archive. In 2016, Marta Tech participated in a tender to supply camouflage and radio parts. They submitted fake compliance reports. The case was hushed up when someone at the top pulled some strings. Let me guess, I said dully. No charges, no fines. That's right, but guess whose name is on the board of directors Anatoly A. Chernov? I isolated the digital signature from the financial transfer you sent. Zlata interrupted the VPN they were using, which was dirty. DNS leak. This IP address leads to a home modem in the Odintsovo area, registered to Larisa Rostova. A chill ran down my spine. So they're transferring money directly from home. Exactly. And here's something else Zlata added. One of the purchase orders that went through the Marta Tech system matches the batch number of the reconnaissance drones we flagged as missing a few years ago during your deployment. You were still in Syria then, weren't you? My mind flashed. That case was never solved. Half the equipment disappeared after the inspection. Someone had covered it all up. I need a chain of evidence, I said. Every login, every IP, every transaction they touched. This isn't just fraud, this is theft of military property on a grand scale. Zlata's screen flickered. Her face tightened. Kira, she said carefully, your mailbox in 2042 was accessed from an unknown device. I'm not saying you've been hacked. I'm saying someone is trying to cover their tracks, and you just lit up their radar. The letter arrived in a plain envelope. A cease and desist demand. But I have already sent my report to the main military investigative directorate of the investigative committee. Inside the envelope, which I sent by registered mail, were copies of bank transfers, falsified documents, metadata chains, audio recordings, and affidavits detailing how my personal data was used to access classified contracts. Each sheet was numbered, watermarked, and bound together with something none of them had counted on, given the soldiers' ability to build a case from scratch. This step took the case to the federal level. Soon, Regina called. Larisa, having learned about my appeal to the investigative committee, burst into her office, distraught and confused. You think this will help her, she lisped. She'll drag us all to the bottom, including her own father. Regina calmly handed her a copy of the same cease and desist letter and quietly said, I advise you to inform your lawyer that intimidating a federal witness is a criminal offense. A few days later, Regina and I were sitting in a glass conference room in the investigative committee building in Moscow. Across from us sat a high-profile investigator. His handshake was firm but not forced. We've reviewed the materials, he began. We believe that a criminal investigation is formally justified. We issue federal subpoenas in the name of Anatoly Chernov, Larisa Volkova, and Semyon Rostov. The courtroom was cold, bright, white, with steel benches. I stood at the witness table, my right hand raised. I didn't tremble. I remembered the day my grandfather handed me the keys to the house. The day I returned to find my name erased. The night I heard my father's voice, plotting behind my back. Now I stood here not as a disowned daughter, but as an officer with an impeccable reputation, a cybersecurity analyst, and most importantly, a plaintiff supported by the state prosecution. Lieutenant Colonel Rostova, the prosecutor began. Please describe what was done to your property. I met his gaze, then turned it to the judge. They forged my signature on Darstina, transferring the family property. They laundered money through offshore accounts disguised as charitable foundations, used my military credentials to apply for federal contracts they had no legal access to. Evidence flashed across the screens, a photo of the fake deed of gift, screenshots of the IP logs that Zlata had traced to Larisa's home network, audio files with my father's muffled but distinct voice. Larisa sat motionless. Pale, Anatoly leaned forward, whispering urgently to his lawyer. My father didn't even blink. The defense tried to object, but Regina presented a declaration from our digital expert. The chain of custody was intact. There was no falsification. The timestamps were in place. The final nail was the supply contract with my old codes, clearance and Anatoly's name on the application. Before the verdict was announced, I saw him at the marble column in the hallway. Not in a suit, but in my old wool coat. Naomi, his voice was low and husky, that's not the point, I'm your father. You lost that right the day you erased me from everything, I said. Were you afraid? No, you were proud. You couldn't stand that your daughter came back in uniform, not a dress, with medals, not a wedding ring. He tried to object, begged not to ruin the family name. I laughed bitterly. You've already erased my name. I know I've failed you, he whispered, but I'm still your father. I looked at his shaking hand, extended toward me. For a second, I saw the man who had once fixed my bike, and then I remembered the empty chair at my graduation from the academy. The silence after my business trips, the house from which I was thrown out as a stranger. I did not take his hand. I do not hate you, I said, but I cannot forgive you in the name of justice. About justice, I added. Are you asking for mercy or not? The judges' voices echoed through the silent courtroom. Larissa Volkova, 6 years of imprisonment in a general regime penal colony. Anatoly Chernov, 8 years of strict regime. Semyon Rostov, 10 years of strict regime without the right to parole. A sigh went through the hall. No applause, no shouts. I didn't smile. I just nodded at Regina. It wasn't a victory. It was over. It wasn't reporters waiting outside. The first thing I saw were veterans, men and women in faded uniforms. One of them, a man with a prosthetic leg and calm, confident eyes, stepped forward and extended his hand. Lieutenant Colonel Rostov. We are not forgotten, he said. Not forgotten as long as people like you are still standing, I replied. I did not return to that house. I didn't need it anymore. What I wanted wasn't brick and wood. It was the right to belong to my own story. A few weeks later, I stood in the Defense Ministry's Hall of Fame, looking up at the Wall of Honor. It was dark granite, engraved with the names of those who had made outstanding contributions to national security. And now my name was there. Lieutenant Colonel Kira Rostova, GRU Special Forces, Valor, Service, Honor. No family portrait had ever meant so much. No inheritance could compare. I stood tall and calm. And though tears stung my eyes, I did not cry. Justice does not come in noise and revenge. It comes in the quiet courage of one who refuses to be erased.